Science Department for the Jammu Kashmir Football Association since 2005 to present. He is also an ex-physical therapist of the Jammu Kashmir Rugby Football Association, ex-physio for the Railways Sports Promotion Board, New Delhi, and he has been invited as a resource person in numerous national as well as international webinars. He is also a certified instructor of the BLS and the CPR from the AHA, and Dr. Shahnawaz sir has also contributed a lot of the international paper regarding to the sports injury, especially the area of interest is the football medicine, and he is also a renowned football medicine expert. So we are really proud to have Dr. Shahnawaz sir with us on the board. I would like to welcome you, sir, here to spare your precious time. Over to you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Himanshu. It's a great honor for me, to host such a wonderful webinar. And even I congratulate you all that you have been conducting wonderful and fantastic webinar series for past 1 month. Let me take the opportunity to congratulate each and every physio on the World Physical Therapy Day, because this day belongs to us. So we all must be proud to be physios. And I consider myself as a healthcare worker, because as a physio, you can contribute a lot to the society, not by treating the disease, but awareing them how to prevent the disease and injuries in general. So today, it's in continuation with the previous topic, that is serious medical events in the football. Previously, we discussed about the sudden cardiac arrest. I will tell you one interesting thing. There is a football player, his name is Anwar Ali. He played under 17 World Cup for the India. But what happened this year, he signed Mohammedan Sports and Kolkata, and they sent him for the medical examination. And it revealed to their surprise that he is having some congenital anomalies in his heart. And he went to the France, there the doctors discussed, they investigated him, and finally they suggest him that he should not go for any kind of sports activities. So they see the career of a player is ending. If he doesn't stop here, then he may land in trouble. Someday we will hear, God forbid, like he met a sudden cardiac arrest and sudden cardiac death. See, this is the importance of how education is. Like when I am educating, I am being educated. So you can convey this message, pass on to your, known players, other people, like how you have to be like this. So today's topic is concussion in sports. Now, you can see this picture. Two female footballers, they are going for a head, and there is a contact. It is the most form of sports-related brain injury, and it can be defined as a complex of pathophysiological process affecting brain induced by traumatic biomechanical forces. It may be caused by a direct blow to the head, face, neck, or elsewhere on the body with an impulsive force transmitted to the head. Most concussions occur following with other players. I would like to show you this video. This is 2018 World Cup, Iran versus Morocco. You can see the player in red shirt. He's lying down. Now see the replay. See, his head is hitting directly to the ground. See, he is unconscious. Maybe it might have been a temporarily. He is trying to assess his orientation, like where are we, which match we are. See, he is trying to make him up, but you see, he is not steady. This communication is very important because by this communication you will come to know whether the player is oriented about his cognitive. See, see, he is not balanced. You can see the complexity of this. Coach is getting annoyed that his player is not playing in the crucial match. Now I will like to show you one more video of World Cup that was played in Germany 2014. See, the direct blow to the head. The player is lying motionless. See, as a physio, how responsive you have to be there. Within no time, you have to reach there. So you saw the video how this is happening.
A Friday morning in Bolton, at the training ground of the Wanderers. A normal workday for one of the Premier League's football clubs, so it seems. But nothing.
Now, it typically results in the rapid onset of short-lived impairment of neurological function that resolves spontaneously. It may result in neuropathological change, but the acute clinical symptoms largely reflect a functional disturbance. That means the anatomy is there, means it is because of it affects the function, not exactly the structure. Means maybe there may be some axonal injury, but not to the level of neurons and other structures. It results in a graded set of clinical syndromes that may last or may not involve loss of consciousness. You saw in both the cases, the players were unconscious for a moment, but they then returned their conscious. But the symptoms can go and progress. Resolution of the clinical and cognitive symptom typically follows a sequential course. At times, I have seen a player, he had amnesia, he could not recognize us, he was not oriented. But later on, after 10 minutes, he started recognizing things. No abnormality on standard structural neuroimaging. Suppose if all of a sudden, means after this we go for an imaging, the imaging will be quite normal. And the same thing happened to one of my player when he had this concussion. I asked him like orientation, which half of the match is, how many goals we score, which venue we are, what exactly we are doing. So he was oriented, but he told me, he is having double vision, diplopia, and he is seeing more colors. That worried me. And I took him first for the CT scan. The CT scan was fine. Then I took him to the neurosurgeon. He examined him for a while. He said, it's okay. Now, history. Whenever there is a concussion, how we can come to know. The symptoms experienced following a concussion can be very diffuse and quite variable. They may vary from person to person. And there is an assessment chart, that is Sports Concussion Assessment Tool 5. Previously it was 4, before that it was 3. Assessment asks specifically about the presence and severity of 22 different symptoms. Like there are different set of things in that, but preferably we ask for 22 symptoms. If they are present, then we can come to know the deterioration and the severity of the concussion. The symptoms are scored from 0 to 6, with 6 being the most severe symptoms. After this information has been collected, it is suggested that one calculates a symptom score, the sum of the total number of reported symptoms, and symptom severity score, the sum of the reported severity of the each symptom. This provides objective data that can be used to track the athlete's recovery. Ideally, this data can be also compared to the pre-injury levels. For example, see what is happening when we must have a SCAT5 along with us when we are going any sports field, whether that's a contact, partial contact, or full contact game, because so that we don't know when the concussion will occur or any other injury, so we can assess along that side. And suppose if we have a previous history of head injury, then these symptoms and those symptoms we can compare. So this is the 22 these questions we asked. Suppose how do you feel? You should score yourself on the following symptom. It's given in the SCAT. Suppose headache, if it is present, mild, moderate, severe, pressure on the head, neck pain, nausea or vomiting, dizziness, blurred vision, balance problems. You saw in first video the player was not in a proper balance. Sensitivity to light, photophobia, sensitivity to noise, feeling slowed down, feeling like in a fog, don't feel right, difficulty in concentrating, difficulty remembering, fatigue or low energy, confusion, drowsiness, trouble falling asleep, more emotional. You might have seen in second video, the player was more emotional. He wanted to play, but the concerned doctor over there, he stopped him from further participation. Irritability, he was irritative, sadness, no, because of these nervousness or anxious. Total number of symptoms, maximum possible is 22. Symptom severity score is 132. So once you go through this SCAT5, you will come to know how it is to be rated. Now, there are some modifiers. There is a range of factors that might influence an individual's response to a head injury. So what are these? These has been described as modifiers. So something, suppose for example, we do some activity and there are some other factors which can give a different response because of those modifiers. It is likely that when present, they may make people more prone to suffering a head injury. For example, age is there, or the level of play is there, and other things, and to be at greater risk for further injury. These modifiers are important to consider in a detailed concussion history. So whenever we are taking history, we must take those modifiers into consideration. It is envisioned that players with such modifying features would be managed in an interdisciplinary manner, coordinated by a doctor with specific expertise in the management of concussive injuries. See, in sports, the cardiologists are separate. They work with the sports population only. And similarly, we have the neurologists and neurosurgeons who have expertise in sports-related head injuries and concussions. Similarly, we have the sports radiologists. They can give a clear-cut picture of the investigation. They may also require more aggressive investigations. So first one is loss of consciousness. If the player is unconscious, so that means there could be the severity could be the more. Fine. In the overall management of moderate to severe traumatic brain injury, duration of LOC is an acknowledged predictor of outcome. For example, if a player is unconscious for, say, suppose 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 1 minute, and if it is prolonged, so you can come to know how the recovery would be. Wallace published findings on concussion described LOC associated with specific early cognitive deficits. It has not been noted as a measure of severe injury severity. Prolonged loss of consciousness duration more than 1 minute would be considered a factor that may modify the management. So whatever is present at the time of injury, that can determine its extent and longevity. Second is amnesia and other symptoms. Published evidence suggested that the nature, burden, and the duration of clinical post-concussive symptoms may be more important than the presence or duration of the amnesia alone. So this is what I have been telling you, like if the symptoms persist, that means the pathophysiology is more, and it is not only a transient, it may prolong. Further, it must be noted that a retrograde amnesia varies with the time of measurement, means when you are asking him, what happened, what when we are, and hence is poorly reflect. Actually, it depends how experienced you are, when, which factor you are asking when. Now, motor and convulsive phenomena. Athletes who sustain a concussion may appear to be having a seizure. Fine. A variety of immediate motor phenomena, tonic, posturing, or convulsive movements may accompany a concussion. Suppose if these things are there, then that means that disease may prolong. This event may prolong, the treatment may prolong, and recovery from the concussion may also prolong. Actually, why I am telling this, because in athlete, important factor for the coach is when the player can return. Sometimes you know how long the duration. For example, if it's a hamstring strain grade 2, 4 weeks is enough. After 4 weeks he can return into the play. But there are some other things like in this concussion, if you see these factors, then you have to take them into consideration while framing the return to play policy. Mental health issues and learning disorders. Mental health issues such as depression have been reported as a long-term consequence of traumatic brain injuries, including sports-related concussion. Literature in football is inconclusive. See, actually the problem is inconclusive. Actually the problem is the reporting is important. How many people are reporting the injuries? Then what about the statistics? What about the data? How they are framing it? So there is still some shortcomings into it. Neuroimaging studies using MRI suggest that a depressed mood following concussion may reflect an underlying pathophysiological abnormality consistent with the limbic frontal mode of depression. So why we have been discussing this? Because after concussion, the player may have depression. So you have to take care of that in framing the policy to return to play. Other studies suggest that depression is reactive due to the trauma and its consequences. Maybe after some time, the depression may go off its own when the structures will be healing. Now, gender. The role of female gender as a possible modifier in the management of concussion is not yet clear, but female gender may be a risk factor for injury and or influence injury severity. And actually, it has been studied, and it has been analyzed, and it has been reported that females are more prone to concussion or head injury. Whether this is a true difference due to, example, hormonal or physiological factors, or due to reporting bias with a better self-observation of female players has not been clarified yet. Maybe it may be because of their the physiology which the women have, or sometimes the males are not reporting, which I earlier told you that there are some things I don't report my injury. So what about the statistics? But others are very transparent, and they are very honest, and they report it. Maybe it may have that effect as well. Now, age. Children and adolescents with concussion should be managed more conservatively. It is suggested that the adult recommendation could be applied to children and adolescents down to the age of 30. So we have two sports concussion assessment tools. One is for the adults, in 13 above, and one is for the children. I will be going through that. Below that age, children report concussion symptoms different from adults and require age-appropriate symptom checklist as a component of assessment. As with adults, children should not be returned to routine practice or match until completely symptom-free. This generally requires a longer time frame for adults than for adults. Now, when suppose if we have a 10-year or 11-year-old school-going children, he met and had head injury and he's having head concussion. So how we can come to know whether the student or that athlete has no return to the normal? The basic thing is school attendance and activities may also need to be modified, so that it's not like in school they are playing. They can be precursors again, and they should not be pressed that you have to attend this school means how many days and all that. We must be very lax in that. These players should not return to football until they have a successful return to school. So that means their cognitive function and other things have returned to normal. Now they can be ready for the return to sport. Because of the different physiological response and long-term recovery after concussion and specific risk diffuse cerebral swelling related to head impact during childhood, adolescence, a more conservative return to play approach is recommended. Because coach will be always forcing you when he will return, when he or she will return. You have to be a good counselor both to the coach as well as to the athlete. It is appropriate to extend the amount of time of asymptomatic rest. How long the player is asymptomatic, you have to take care of that, or the length of the graded exertion in children and adolescents. You cannot all of a sudden put them to the back to the same training volume and intensity. So you have to start from somewhere. I can say from start from zero, then progress to higher levels. Now, elite players. The guidelines established during the latest consensus meeting should be applied to all levels of play, including professional and elite players. Obtaining pre-injury baseline data and generous multidisciplinary diagnostic is suggested in this group. So, like if elite players are playing, you must have participation history and other things so that you can compare. Like suppose if somebody is at the age of 50, he is playing. If you know his pre-playing career or pre-playing events and history, then you can compare how the age is affecting it. Now, SCAT 5. This is a standardized tool. Let me show it first. This is Sports Concussion Assessment Tool. This is developed by the Concussion in Sports Group for use by medical professionals in International Ice Hockey Federation, FIFA, Olympics, and others. You can see details. This you should always keep. As a sports physiotherapist, you must always keep this thing so that on the sideline you can fill it and then you can go through the points and you can analyze the player. Immediate or on-field assessment. These are the red flags. If the player or the athlete is having pain in neck or neck is tender, seizure or convulsion, loss of consciousness, deteriorating conscious state, vomiting, increasing restlessness, agitated or combative, weakness or tingling, severe or increasing headache, then you have to remove the player same moment. Then step 2 is observable signs. Memory assessment, Maddox question is there. Then step 4, Glasgow Coma Scale. Then cervical spine assessment. In a patient who is not lucid or fully conscious, a cervical spine injury should be assumed until proven otherwise. And I will tell you one thing, suppose always as a sports physio, you must have a hard collar and soft collar in your bag. Maybe there may be trauma to the cervical spine. You have to fix that. You can use the hard collar. Or if it is a sprain to the neck, you can use the soft collar. Likewise, you must have hinged knee brace or immobilizers and other things in your kitty. Office or off-field management, athlete background. Then this is the symptom evaluation, which I told you 22 symptoms are there. Then step 3 cognitive screening, orientation. See, what ideally I do, suppose whenever I run to the ground, I ask them who you are, where are you, what we are doing, which half we are playing, how many goals we have scored, which match it is, which day it is. So this is simply you can ask within no time and you will get to know about this. Then there are different things. If you download it from BJSM, then you will get to know you have to practice it 2-3 times, then only you can be mastering it. Scoring on the SCAT should not be used as a standard alone method to diagnose concussion, major recovery, or make decisions about an athlete's readiness to return to the competition after concussion. So this is one. And this is for the, there is one. I think this is for the children's. 5 to 12 years of age. Recognize, remove, you can go through it separately, then you can have it. So this was an idea so that you can use this tool readily. The SCAT5 is validated in athletes who are 13 years of age or older. For children younger than 13, the SCAT5 child SCAT5 should be used. The SCAT5 provides a meaningful base for the assessment of a conclusive player in a clinical environment. The details of each individual assessment will, however, be vary depending on player's presentation. What are his clinical, like what symptoms he feels. Then about when you assess him, then you can come up to what you are feeling about the athlete. The key features of an assessment should include a medical assessment, include a comprehensive history, including injury mechanism, initial symptoms. When you are on the field, then you can see, likewise, you saw 2 previous videos, like how injury occurred. And when the mechanism is in your mind, then definitely the questions will come to you, what exactly you have to ask. Past history of injuries, then you will ask, do you have any, previously you had any head injury? Initial symptoms, what were there? And concussion modifiers like pre-existing headaches or learning disability. Maybe some players may say, I used to have some headache, and some or learning disability. Maybe the coach will take it, this player is very, it's very difficult to make him learn new things quickly. And neurological, neuropsychological, and neurovestibular, oculomotor, and cervical spine screening is examination, because I told you there may be trauma to the cervical spine. A determination of the clinical status of the player, including whether there has been an improvement or deterioration since the time of injury. This may involve seeking additional information from parents, coaches, teammates, and eyewitnesses to the injury. Sometimes when we see the player and after some time he recovers, we can see, no, now he is feeling better. Or the coach himself or the parents will say, no, he had an injury and in the home it took him 5-6 days to recover, and what kind of symptoms he had, how they progressed or regressed. A determination of the need of emergency. See, to exclude a more severe brain injury involving a structural abnormality. Sometimes we have to see whether there is any structural involvement or not. Mostly it is functional involvement. So you can go through these two so that we can download this SCAT5. You can have this screenshot and SCAT child SCAT5. Now examination. The SCAT5 provides a basic examination protocol for concussion. This includes cognitive assessment, which I told you, the assessment of balance and coordination, as well as cervical spine screening assessment, and neurological assessment, including neurovestibular and oculomotor examination should be added. Balance assessment. And assessment of balance is important component of the SCAT. See, you might have seen in first video, the player was not in proper balance. Posture was not stable. So this is the first thing, that something wrong, some pathophysiology is there in the brain. Can be tested by using modified balance error scoring system test. The instruction is needed to be complete this test or included in the SCAT5 assessment tool. Unless and until you will not download it, you will get a copy of it and you go through it once, twice, thrice. Then you try it in your clinic with normal patients first. Then whenever you get any opportunity to work with a concussive patient, then that time you will see how it has to be. The player is asked to remain in each position with his or her eyes closed for 20 seconds. The number of errors during each trial is recorded. See, this is double leg and this is single leg. This is tandem stance. He is closing his eyes. Now, investigations. Concussion is a clinical diagnosis based on neurological, neuropsychological, neurovestibular, oculomotor, and cervical examination findings. So, neuroimaging we do objective balance assessment, we do neuropsychological assessment, and we do some laboratory studies. First, neuroimaging. Concussion is different from more severe forms of traumatic brain injury in that no structural neuronal damage can be seen on conventional neuroimaging. More sophisticated neuroimaging technologies and extensive MRI post-processing can, however, suggest an axonal sharing injury. So it all depends on the symptoms of the patient. Like if symptoms are there, moderate symptoms are there, and you are going for the CT scan and it reveals normal anatomy, so what you need to do, and so you can say it's okay. But after some time, if the symptoms deteriorate, then you go for further investigations. If a player is thought to have sustained a brain trauma presenting with signs loss of consciousness, amnesia, or disorientation, neuroimaging is indicated. In the acute phase, whenever there is suspicion of an intracerebral structural lesion, obtaining a CT is essential. So first thing is, this is what I also do. We go for the CT scan. If it is normal, then we check for the symptoms, whether the symptoms deteriorate or not. If they deteriorate, if there is a persistent headache, then we go for the further investigations. More advanced structural and functional imaging techniques, including gradient echo, fusion and diffusion imaging, or single photon emission computed tomography, have great sensitivity for structural and functional abnormality. It also depends the place where you are, whether you are facilitated with these things or not. So this is something, like high-end facilities of imaging. But if the athlete is a professional, then you cannot take risk. The predictive value of various abnormalities that may be incidentally discovered has not yet been clarified, and therefore needs further investigation. I will give you one example. Suppose if somebody goes for an MRI, and for MRI spine, then the report comes, we have L5, S1, ABCD, something like that, and the patient says, no, as of now, I don't have any kind of symptoms. In the same way, sometimes we go for the MRI of the brain, then some other things come out. So this is what we are saying, that needs further. That means if he is positive, whether the false positive or negative, it may be false or false positive as well. So further investigation needs to be done. Now, objective balance assessment. A number of studies using both sophisticated force play technology and more simple clinical balance tests like accelerometer assisted balance assessment have identified postural stability deficits lasting approximately 72 hours following sports-related concussion. It appears that postural stability testing provides a useful tool for objective assessing motor functioning and should be considered a reliable and valid addition to the assessment of players suffering from concussion, particularly where symptoms or signs indicate a balance deficit component. As outlined earlier, components of balance are part of the SCAT-5 assessment tool. Now, neuropsychological assessment. The neuropsychological assessment is an important component in the return to play management. See, these first you are using SCAT, you are using along the field. Once you decide that you have to take the player from the field, then you go for imaging. This is the side by side you are doing in the clinical. This is in the clinical setting. Immediately you cannot go for the neuropsychological and other things. It should be, because that time maybe he may give some wrong answers or incorrect answers, and you may come to some different conclusion. It should support the team doctor in his her decision making process, but should not be the only base for return to play is a complex process. It's not like if a player is his mood and his psychology is good, we should let him to get returned back to the play. No, there are different aspects which I have been discussing. It should be ideally performed when symptoms have resolved, because during symptoms we cannot come to know they may be biased, there may be some masking. So how can be you sure that no, he is not having any this deficit? Precision baseline tests have been established in different sports already. Like if you have a concussion last year, now the player is coming with in the new season, then you can do different kind of tests so that we can compare what was there after concussion and what is now this year. The ultimate return to play decision should be remain a medical one, in which a multidisciplinary approach, where possible, in the absence of this these neurophysiological, psychological and other formal balance assessment testing, a more conservative return to play approach may be appropriate. Sometimes you don't have these facilities, you don't have a psychologist, you don't have a neuropsychiatrist there, then you can use formal balance assessment, because that can at least that can give you some idea about the pathophysiology in the brain. Now, laboratory investigations, there is no routine rule for blood markers following concussion injuries. There are, however, a number of biochemical markers that are used in research settings. Maybe over a period of time, they are trying to see if a concussed patient is there. What about his, in blood, which markers are up? Then up, maybe other head injuries. For research purposes, they can be do, but in the this clinical settings, there are as such no laboratory studies. Now, treatment. The cornerstone of concussion management is an initial defined period of physical and cognitive rest. So you give him rest from both brain activity as well as from the physical activity. So the symptoms can resolve and the pathophysiology can get clear when the athlete start feeling better, have improved. Ideally, it takes 24 to 72 hours, followed by a graduated increase in activity and cognitive load. So when 24 hours, you give him some little task. After 48 hours, so you are loading him. Likewise, we are loading the tissues. In the same way, you are trying to give some pressure to his brain, how the brain feels, how the brain reacts to that particular task. A medical assessment and clearance is then needed before a return to play. Treatment options. After the assessment on the field of play, a variety of the modalities can be used to treat an injured player. General, pharmacological, physical therapy, exercise, other interventions. First thing is general treatment. So the majority of the concussions will recover spontaneously over several days. Ideally, 6 days are kept for this thing. And these 6 days, we assess the patient 24 hourly. In this situation, it is expected that a player will proceed progressively through the graduated return to play protocol. Graduated return to play protocol. Once initial symptoms have resolved or significantly improved and after medical clearance, the player is able to start a progressive return to activity program. It is not all of a sudden we will put him in the play. In the first video, this Moroccan player, he was made to play only after 5 days, of which the FIFA took a strong note, and the team doctor was served as this explanation. How, see, FIFA is doing a lot of research, how they neglect that research and they are letting the player to play only after 5 days. That is why there has to be a progressive return. The suggested return to play protocol consists of 6 stages and follows a gradual process. So stage 1, rehabilitation program, no activity. Functional exercise, symptom limited rest. Physical, no exercise. Cognitive, no TV, PC, gaming or intensive reading. Then objective is recovery. Second is light exercise. Following medical clearance, walking, swimming or stationary, cycling or biking. Intensity less than 70% maximum perceived heart rate. Aerobic training, no resistance training. The aim or objective is activation of the cardiovascular system. Third is football specific exercise. Individualized training. We cannot put him along the team training because team might be training at some different intensity and tempo. So some running drills, aerobic, mini start, progressive anaerobic drills as well. No heading impact. So one more thing is, like, if you have a head injury, the player himself can take part in those activities which does not involve head and neck. The aim is the football specific movements so that the brain starts remembering what movements exactly it has to do. Non-contact training drills now, more complex training, passing and explosive movements, progression from aerobic to anaerobic, increase of exercise coordination, return to routine training with the train now. Following medical clearance, full contact practice with the football players or whatever the sport it is with the train. This restoration of confidence when the player trains with the team, there is his confidence goes up. He feels now Now I am not injured. So he enjoys that with simultaneously he trains with the team, and he gets a morale boosting. Now I am fine. I can do the training. I can go for the match. Now sixth is return to play. That is normal match play. Now, general, each step should take at least 24 hours, which I told you. Like, if the symptoms they occur or worsen, then you should stop the activity that time. The player should continue to proceed to the next stage, only asymptomatically at the current level during the exercise and afterwards. So, when player is returning or he is doing some kind of activity which I mentioned, if during that period he is symptomatic or after training he is symptomatic, then we should discontinue. So the injured player can ideally return to the match play 6 days post injury. However, if any post concussion symptoms occur during or after the graduated program, the player should be dropped back to the previous asymptomatic. For example, if there is no day one and day two, day three, he is symptomatic. Put him in the day two, or if it is day two, then put him in the day one. After and assess, just check his progression after 24 hours of rest. Now, pharmacological treatment. Actually, the players may have headache. I will mention one thing. If the player is having this migraine, the players may have migraine type or tension type headaches. The best activity for that is aerobic or light jogging. Where possible, it is important to identify and treat the athlete's symptoms. Pharmacological treatment can have a role here. Headaches are the most common symptom of concussion. Migraine-like and tension-like headaches were identified as the two main types of headaches associated with sports-related concussion. Both can mainly be treated effectively with the short-term use of analgesics like paracetamol or NSAIDs like ibuprofen. It is important to remember, though, that these painkillers are not designed to be used for prolonged periods and can cause headaches themselves if taken over a longer period of time. Headaches that are accompanied by photophobia are more likely to be associated with a more prolonged recovery period. I suggest you, suppose when you are going for a neurological examination and all that, along that, go and get his ophthalmological examination done. As there are many different types of headaches, an accurate understanding of the headache's cause is essential for the treatment approaches. Sleep disturbances can occur and may need pharmacological treatment in selected cases. It's not like you will give everybody, you will give anxiolytics and other things. No, there should be assessment. And you have to go and ask him what kind of sleep disturbance it is. The treatment option should be considered in agreement with a neurologist, sports medicine physician, or a sleep specialist. So this is multidisciplinary approach. It is not only one person is treating the concussed patient. Concussed players should not be taking any medications. For example, if I am taking NSAID and it is masking my pain, I am returning back to the play. What exactly? Something wrong is there, but I am trying to mask it. The same thing is applying. See, whenever any player gets injury, apart from concussion, I'm saying general. So ideally what we do, we put an NSAID sprays. They can mask the severity of the injuries. Better just put some cold, cold sprays. They just an analgesic, not anything else. Your aim should be analgesia, nothing else. Now, physical therapy. In some situations, physical therapy treatments can be useful. Many players who complain of headaches following a concussion suffer from cervicogenic headaches related to an additional cervical spine dysfunction. These players can often benefit from physiotherapy treatment directed towards their neck, including soft tissue therapy and mobilization. Maybe because of this headache and all that, there can be spasm in the neck and the shoulder muscles. So you have to assess and go for the treatment accordingly. In a similar way, players with vestibular symptoms include dizziness, balance problems, and visual symptoms may benefit from specialized neurovestibular and oculomotor rehabilitation. In each case, an accurate diagnosis is essential to differentiate between a brain injury and an additional cervical spine or peripheral vestibular disorder. If impairment of the vestibular organ was diagnosed, vestibular and oculomotor treatment should start immediately to initiate central compensation. Suggested reading, you can go through bjsm.bmj.com and you can find more on it. Now, exercise. When an athlete has had symptoms for more prolonged period than expected, low intensity aerobic exercises can be useful treatment option in many cases, especially in professional athletes. This exercise must be conducted at level that does not increase the symptoms. This is what I previously told you, that you have to go, there should be a gradual progression. Before initiating an exercise program, it is important to assess the degree of exercise intolerance associated with the player's concussion. This can be done using a graduated treadmill test. Here you can go in a gym or any setup where you can have and you can check it. The player is asked to exercise on a treadmill with an increasing level of intensity. The test is determined if the player develops any symptoms. Future exercise is prescribed at a dose that is below the level that provokes the symptoms. So this is best test you can do at your clinics, that you are asking him to go for some exercise, means treadmill. So you can come to know the severity and how much the recovery is there. This type of test is reliable, safe and valid. Other interventions, psychological management. Psychological approaches may have potential application with this injury, particularly when the patient has a number of modifiers, which I previously discussed. Clinicians are also encouraged to evaluate the concussed player for effective symptoms, suggesting depression or anxiety disorder, as these symptoms may be common in concussed players. Nutrition, there is some little evidence, but there is some little evidence to suggest that nutrition can have a role in the recovery from concussion. For example, the nutritional supplement creatine kinase has been identified as a possible treatment for those with concussion. There is, however, very limited data to support the effectiveness of this approach. Outcomes, most players who sustain a concussion recover predictably over a 7 to 10 day period. In some cases, the course may prolong. There are some challenges that are important to highlight. Re-injury can occur there. Persistent symptoms can be there. Malignant cerebral edema can be there. Chronic traumatic encephalopathy, blood biomarkers, and when to retire. Now, heading. So main mechanism was, it could be heading, or previously in the video you saw other direct blow to the head. It has been suggested that heading can lead to long-term neurological impairment. The current evidence for a correlation between heading frequency and neurocognitive deficits is weak and probably biased by inaccurate reports of heading frequency. Acute concussion can, however, occur during the act of heading, but the main injury mechanism for head trauma in football players is contact with another player or falls. So contact with the ball is not important factor. Suggested reading in this regard is BJSM. You can screenshot and you can go through this. There is some research about the heading. Now, prevention. How can we prevent? See, most important thing is the mechanism is direct contact with the head. Fine. So if two players are going for a head, and that thing we have to see whether it is within the rules or they are, they are breaking some rules. It appears that rule changes are an effective way to limit the risk of concussion in football. A variety of other methods have also been suggested to reduce the risk of injury. First, rule change. Second is protective equipment and pre-injury assessment. Rule change. An assessment of tackle mechanism has identified a deliberate or accidental clash of heads between players and having the highest probability of head injury. A clash of heads frequently occurred when players jump to challenge for the ball in the penalty area, during crosses or corners, and in the center of the pitch following clearance by the goalkeepers or defenders. The second most common cause of head or neck injury involved the use of an arm or hand when the player goes for head, he uses this elbow like this, and he is hitting the head. So what happened? FIFA studied this. In Norwegian studies, head injury was the most common. 60% was the mechanism, with 41 cases due to the head contact with elbow or hand, and 32 due to head contact. So they suggest that if somebody is coming to head with elbow or using hand, he should be punished. He should be shown the card. So when it is in the back of your mind, if I go to head like this, so what will happen? I will be thrown away. So by that way, you are not going to spoil the game and your game as well as the performance of the team, and simultaneously the injury rate can be reduced. The findings of this and similar studies led to recommendation from the FIFA Medical Committee and FMARC to International Football Association Board to ban deliberate elbow to head contact during heading duels. This rule change was instituted prior to 2006 World Cup, FIFA World Cup in Germany, and resulted in a reduction in the incidence of concussion as compared to the previous FIFA World Cups. Protective equipment. Despite the claims of many manufacturers, mouth guards and headgear do not prevent concussion. See, if we are putting a headgear, it will not prevent the concussion. Mouth guards have, however, been shown to significantly reduce the risk. When you are putting the mouth guard, the impact is less. So, dental and facial and skull fractures have shown to be reduced. Because you might have seen Chelsea's goalkeeper Peter Cech. He had this concussion. After that, he was using this, but it cannot prevent concussion. It is just a padded, that they put it around the head just to satisfy their brain that something is there, I won't be getting injury. So pre-injury assessment is important. This is not only with the concussion, with other injuries, other medical conditions. Whenever we go, and we will come to know whether what kind of injury history he has, what kind of treatment protocols he has followed, and for the symptom severity and recovery rate, and back to the play, and did he had any episodes of symptoms there after the return to play. As a result, it is useful to have some objective pre-injury data used as a point of comparison. Precision baseline tests can help identify subtle impairments and can help a clinician make individualized return to play decisions by comparing with previous injury results. Thank you very much. Himanshu, over to you.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot for such a great elaboration on a very good topic, and it was actually a very extensive topic to talk about the concussion in such a short way. It is really great, sir, and you have covered everything from basic to advanced, and every area of management has been even covered in the today's session. So really much appreciating and great lecture, sir, and we had a great learning ahead in this session. So with your kind permission, sir, can I go ahead for the question answer if anybody has any query?
Sure.
Yes, sir. So I would like to request all the participants, if anyone has any query, so they can write down in the chat box for their questions, so we can go ahead for this.
See, is neuroimaging necessary? As I told you, it depends on the symptomology. Sometimes when the player is having apparent head injury, but he says, no, I am okay. So it depends the symptoms and the severity of the symptoms and prolongation, how long the symptoms are there. Actually, when the player will not be able to recognize himself or he is not oriented, so definitely you think of the imaging. Fine, it depends on the symptomology mostly. As in concussion, there is no structural damage. See, when we go for the imaging, what is happening? We are not seeing only the brain, we have to go for the neck injury or other soft tissue injuries as well. So, in order to rule out whether there is any structural injury or not, or it is just physiological. So that thing, to rule out that thing, we may go for the imaging, but it is better, it is advisable to go for the minimum CT scan this. Anybody else? I will tell you one thing. Suppose if a player, I will tell you in COVID, for example, now, if a person is having breathlessness, his oxygen saturation is below 90 degree, what we will go? You will go for an X-ray first. And if something is there, then you will go for the HRCT to confirm why you want to trouble the player or patient. When the investigation is there, that will help you to treat. See, you are there for the benefit of the patient. So you must, undue advantage you don't have to think. There should not be like you are always prescribing CTs, MRIs. That should not be the routine. Then your image will be down. The people will say he is just simply asking for MRI and other things. No, it depends how much clinical orientation you have, clinical reasoning, your reasoning. That's what we are saying. How much experience should you are. Sometimes even I check knee. If it comes out, I will straightway say Lachman is the best possible test for the knee ACL. I say your ACL is gone. Then the player goes for the MRI and definitely the same thing comes out. So it depends how your hand, how your brain is working out of your experience, working experience in different situations. So that time you go for the investigations. Just to add, imaging need only if symptoms are worsening. In case a player develops symptoms during the recovery. See, for example, if in the ground, once my brother was playing, he had a contact with the goal post and he was fine. Once we returned home in the late evening, he developed vomiting and it worried us. I took him to the hospital. There the doctor said to go for this X-ray. And X-ray, there was no apparent fracture and all that. So then we went for the CT scan to check out why this is what I am telling, symptom worsening. This is an indicator. The symptomology itself will tell you whether you have to go for investigations or not. In asymptomatic patients, for example, you don't need to go. In COVID, you see there are so many people who are patients who are asymptomatic. Why you will go for the investigation unnecessary? One is the patient develops symptom and they are getting worsening from mild to moderate, then to severe. Then you definitely see how you will treat. You must know the severity of the injury and the severity of the disease. Accordingly, you will be treating it. You cannot be reluctant. You cannot say, no, you don't need to go for the imaging or any other investigations. So now investigations are part and parcel of your treatment and diagnosis. But you don't have to always rely on the investigations in other cases. Any more questions we have?
I think we have all done with the questions and question and answers, sir. And it was really a wonderful and outstanding session today. We had a great insight and great learning on the concussion injuries in the sports. And as being a physical therapist, because we are the first